Good morning. Welcome to getting to know your Dremel a little better. And I hope I can answer the questions of those that might have some questions. So you can let us know and I'll try my best. But what we're basically going to be focusing on today is looking at starting off with the questions that I often get asked. What do I put where and how do I attach things and fasten things? So it's going to be basic Dremel to start off with, and then we'll see how we progress. So firstly, when you basically have to start working your Dremel, you need to know how to fit your bits. So you have two options. Mostly with your machines, you get the collet system. So what that is a aluminium, almost a claw that then gets tightened with a nut, and you fasten it so that your Dremel bits don't slip around. So if you're strictly using Dremel bits, most of the shafts are, the majority of them are 3.2 millimeter shafts. Okay. When you're drilling, obviously you're going to have thinner and thicker drill bits, and you're going to need a variety of collets to hold them, or a multi-chuck. So multi-chuck works the same as does with your drill. So you can go from a very thin drill bit to a maximum of a 3.8, I think, drill bit. Otherwise, you use the collet system. So in your package, you'll get one. You'll get the 3.2. So if you're wanting to drill or use thinner drill bits, you're going to need to buy the set of drill bits. I've put multi-chuck onto all my machines because it saves me the time looking for the collet, because inevitably if you don't have a system where everything gets grouped, they're lying somewhere and you spend hours trying to find it. So I would recommend the multi-chuck. They actually are the same price, the set or the multi-chuck. Where I do prefer using the collet set is when I do routing, or even in the drill if I'm really wanting very specific holes that have to be quite perfect, because the nut doesn't work itself loose, which your multi-chuck can, because it's spring loaded. So always when you're going to start working as well, find your spanner. I put one on a magnet so that it's always handy, and then just tighten a little bit. It's actually a hand tightening chuck, but you can just take your spanner and just give it a slight turn, and then you know it's quite firm, just to be safe. Also, while I'm working with a little spanner, you've noticed the tapering on the end. That's for fastening your sanding drums. That tiny, anything with a little screw. So you've got it quite handy. Okay. So I put mine on a magnet so that I can always find it. Otherwise, once again, you're always going to be looking for it. And you can't buy it as an accessory, unfortunately. It comes as a spare. So don't lose it. Else you're going to have to go and get it as a spare. Right. So we've basically covered how we're going to tighten them in our machine. So either you're going to put it directly into your machine as I have it over here, or when using the flexible shaft, you also then have the option of using the collets as well. So it's just a screw tightened one, and then I've got it in the router here. I'm using the collet system in the router. Okay. So when it comes to selecting bits, that's always the question, because as I've heard from some of you sitting here, that they've all been thrown into a box, and now you're looking at them and you're thinking, okay, what do I do with them? So the best way to go about it is, or possibly the easiest, is to pick up a catalog at one of the dealers, or look on our website, dremel.com, ZA, and then you've got the South African link, and it gives you all the information in there. So what Dremel have done to make life a little easier is they've color-coded their packaging. So yeah, you can see turquoise. The miscellaneous sort of utility ones are brown, red is cut off. So already you know when you go and stand in a stand, or in front of a stand that's maybe 3 meters long, you've got the colors. So you zone in on, okay, I'm looking for engraving or so. So I'm going to go to that color band, and then they numbered. All the information you need to know about the particular bit is on the packaging. So we don't tend to read these things, only after we've thrown it away, we look at it and we think like, okay, what was the speed that this thing's supposed to work on? Or I'm not going to keep all the packaging because none of them have got the numbers on anyway, so it's good. Just take a look. We've put icons on to tell you what materials they work on. If you're not familiar with the icons, if you've once again got the catalog, the icons are listed in the back, and they explain what they are. So grab one of these, or once again look on the website so that you've got that information. So we're trying to make things as easy as possible for you to be able to select your bits. Okay. So something I could mention right now is the ones that do routing would have a profile picture on it, so that you know that one's going to give me that profile. When it comes to the diamond ones for engraving on glass, I think I do have one that's got a little diamond there. So that immediately you know you can pick up those, and those are going to be what you're going to be using there. Okay. Let's go to engraving. So when we go and do any sort of engraving, you can work on various materials. And then once again, you slumped as to what I do. Go to the catalog, especially the one on the internet. They give you a breakdown. The engraving cutters are very fine. They're tiny, so they are used for soft metals, plastics, and wood. The slightly larger engravers that you can actually see the points and they're not sort of minuscule, they also used on the same materials, but then they're slightly larger. So you can think there's a little bit of a logic going there. The finer the bit, the finer it's going to work, and the larger the bit, the more material it's going to take away at a time. Okay. Also, when it comes to the bits, you need to look at the shape, the profile. Same as with a router, you look to see what the edge looks like so that you can cut that sort of an edge. Otherwise, you can pick up any kind of bit. I had a cylinder shaped one. They all have names, but you don't necessarily, especially the ladies, don't have access to, okay, cylinder. Okay, what does it look like? All right. But once you're familiar with round, you know, cylinder, then okay, fine. If it's textured on the tip, that means it's actually got cutters there, so it's actually going to work there. Some of them are smooth, so you're not going to get any working taking place. You can actually then just use it as a guide. There are also various ways of holding or applying a tip, if we can say applying, if that's the correct word. So once we've got it in the apparatus that we're going to use, I'm using this, just showing with a stylo here, then you basically hold it as a pen. So if you're going to be doing very hard work, possibly, you know, you're not going to be holding it as a pen. You're rather going to be using this one and take sort of a nice grip so that it's nice and firm. This one's nice and light for engraving, especially on glass and smaller things for writing and doing that sort of thing. And so if we're going to, I'm just going to take a piece of wood. I'm not going to switch it on at this point, but you can apply it differently. So you can use the edge to work with. You can actually use the tip of it to work with. And then those that do have a texture on there, you would actually be able to cut a V groove using this one, because you would run it along like that. So other than a round ball, they can all be used in various ways and give you various cuts. So they kind of multi-purpose then in that fashion. You can also have a look. Some of the tips are teardrop shaped, but they all have very specific functions. So if you're fortunate enough to have a batch like I do, try them all out. Or even when you do buy a new tip, just see what type of effect it has on your wood, or on your perspex for that matter, or the aluminium. Just please excuse me, I do suffer from sinus, so I do need to okay. Any questions so far? I'm seeing a frown there. Okay, good. All right, so we've got the engraving ones. We'll come to specifics in a moment or two. Then we also have the diamond, which I mentioned earlier, diamond is very hard. They're electroplated, so you use that on your harder surfaces, and especially on glass, for engraving on glass. So if you want to engrave on glass, normally people think it's this like, wow, it's so difficult. But if you can write or draw, you can engrave on glass, basically. Your glass is just harder than your paper. It's rotary tool. You normally write with a ballpoint pen, so very similar. You just need a firmer hold on it so that it doesn't slip away, because your glass is very slippery. And then you can do your thing, you know, whether it be something sort of just as the alphabet that you want to do, or you want to write a name, or you want to draw a picture. If you can do it, practice it on a piece of paper, you're going to be able to do it on glass as well. It might not be perfect because, as I've said to a lot of people, we don't sell magic wands. If you've got a nice handwriting, you're going to have a nice end result. If not, go and do a calligraphy course, and then you can do that beautiful writing that the engravers do. I mean, they've practiced for quite some time, so the fonts with calligraphy are quite easy when you know how. But most of these things with writing, you need to practice it a little bit. But then we have stamps and we have Koki pens, so we can write it or trace it or use a stencil, and then you basically color in on the lines, and then you get quite a good effect as well. So most things we do in the craft world take a little bit of practice. You never get it right the first time. Um, so just allow yourself the few failures, and then you know you're going to get where you need to be. Any questions so far? Yeah, well, when you're working on a hard material, whether it be metal, shall we say aluminium, glass, or perspex, not a problem. But when you start working on wood, wood has a grain direction. But now, if you're thinking you're wanting to engrave your name on wood, you have to do it the way you write. You can't, sort of compensate any other way. So you need to remember that wood offers a resistance, and that has to do with the grain. And each type of wood has a different grain density, so it's going to affect it as well. You can see if you're just basically taking away, you'll very easily see that your cutters on the engraving cutters are all spaced laterally. When you're working with tungsten carbide, they're in a swirl, and because they're in a swirl, you're almost scooping it away, so you get a much cleaner cut. But with the tungsten carbide bits, we don't have a very large range with very big diameters. They're slightly smaller, so they may not be suitable to get the smoother cut. The smoother cut is great on your harder woods, but when you go against the grain, it does fur it up a tiny little bit. It's not quite as smooth. Yeah. Yeah, you've got to also remember, I think, I don't want to say for sure, but as a general rule, what I've picked up, because I teach, you guys have quite a strong grip, and you tend to push quite hard, where us females have a much lighter grip. And so when I'm doing the type of work that I do, it's very light work, and I say fairy fingers. Remember fairy fingers. So you just want to very gently work. Obviously, if you're going into metal or something that's harder, you've got to apply sort of an equal grip. But I think when something isn't working, you tend to want to force it. So it could be that not for overly forced, but you push a bit harder, and then it tends to bite into the wood. That could be. It's same with when you work with a saw. Kind of like get there now, and you push harder, and then the blade snaps or the blade bends. So I think just practice your pressure, or be more focused on your pressure. That possibly would help. Depending on the material you're working with. Yeah, yeah. But you do find, as I say, with wood grain, because of grain direction, that it does fur up a little bit, but then a bit of sandpaper works quite well. And if you can turn it around, cut from the other side. But if you're carving a figure, there's no way turning around is going to help you in any way. Okay. All right. So we've covered a little bit. Afterwards, you can come. I do have a note. Maybe I can pass that one to you with the profiles of the bits, so that you can just, when you look at it, okay, that makes sense. What you can expect from your bits. And there's nothing stopping you from putting your bits on, taking a scrap of wood and running it along with the grain and cross the grain, just to see the difference in the cut as well. And then for next time what's going to happen with the shaping. So while we are on those engraving and shaping bits, wood is the medium of choice for me. So start with something simple. You're not going to start necessarily and carve a figure of David or something like that, which a lot of people want to do, but it's a slow progression until you sort of get the feel of it. Cut out a heart, shape it a little bit, and see, okay, that's how it goes. Cut out a bird or anything simple, a butterfly, a gun, and just round off the edges just to get to, a feeling, and then you can progress and make something a little bit more substantial as you go along. Right. I mentioned the tungsten carbide bits as well. So if by chance you have tungsten carbide bits and they get muddled up with your ordinary engraving bits, the easiest way, if you don't know really what their shape is, to identify them is you'll find your high-speed cutters. They have a little bit of a shine to them, but they're duller than your tungsten carbide. Tungsten carbide has got a lovely luster, and you can see that especially on the twist of the cutters. You'll find that they when you turn them, they shine a little bit more, and then And also then what I mentioned, as opposed to the straight blade positioning, they twirled. So there are some of the tungsten carbide ones that are straight, but the majority of them are in a swirly pattern, like the swirly ice creams. Okay. That's for harder materials. So that's when you're working on things like steel. Not that we're going to go and engrave on steel because we have a smaller machine that we're going to use. Yeah, but you could mark your tools, like they mark them, men mark them with their names or with something. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so you can do that. And then cast iron, I think I mentioned. Yeah, so your harder materials you would use them for. And wood, I like using them on wood because of the burnished effect. You get a very nice smooth, and you don't have to come and clean up afterwards necessarily. Okay. After that, I'm going to just look in the catalog what is the next color that comes up so that you could sort of follow through. Okay, then we have the green color, which are the grinding stones. So we have a number of different ones. The green stones are silicon carbide. So silicon carbide is used for deburring or smoothing or grinding, whatever term you'd like to use, glass. So if you have a piece of glass that's been chipped, you can just smooth it out that way with these. And they also come in various shapes. If you've possibly broken a nail while doing something, that works as well. And then you might have received it was Women's Day and it's been Father's Day, a mug that I love you or you're special or something, and the ear's broken off and you think, oh, shame. So you just smooth that glaze off with your green stone, and then you can use it for pens or something to that effect. So you don't have to chuck it out. You do the same with your salad bowls. If it's got a slight chip, sometimes that happens, especially if the thicker glass ones, you can just deburr it and then you can use it again and there's no damage to your fingers. Pyrex and the hardened glass is a different kettle of fish. That's quite hard. But if you're persistent, you can actually just take the sharp away. And then at least you know you're not going to hurt yourself when you wash it. Okay. Also, when it comes to engraving on glass, the more pointy profiles, you can actually, I call it color in. So if you've outlined your letter or a flower or something on a piece of glass, you can actually fill it in using greenstone. It's cheaper because it doesn't wear as fast, and it's also the harder you push with diamond, the deeper it cuts. So it's a very smooth finish. So if you perhaps have a sliding door and you've put something on there so that you don't walk through the door, and it's a large area that you need to fill in, you use the greenstone. Because being the diamond ones are electroplated, so as they expose, they fall off, and you have to replace, and it's always more expensive to replace diamond than it is a grinding stone. Okay. Then we also have the red oxide ones. Just find a container here. So also with different profiles, they're sort of a reddy color, and they for deburring soft metals. So for instance, if you've cut your curtain rail a little shorter, or perhaps ironing boards, there's a hook and it snags things, or the gazebo sometimes, you've just got a sharp edge, then you just grind it down with that. Okay. So what you also do get, because sometimes if you work on the wrong material, you would find that I might have one here, your stone has changed shape, or perhaps you have one and you think, I wish that point was just a bit sharper. You actually get a dressing stone. It's a little brick. You might have one lying there and you've wondered what to do with it. You actually change the shape of your dressing stone with not your dressing stone, the bit using the dressing stone. Okay. So that's what you use that for. And even also if you've got the other ones that if you're doing texturing and you want it to be a bit sharper, then you can, use the dressing stone for those. And then your stones, then you would be finding on the green backing. Okay. Yellow is for polishing, buffing and polishing, and there are quite a number of them. Just want to find the mandrel while I'm at it. Let me just see where it might be. But you have a mandrel. Mandrel basically is that part of it. And then you get one that has a screw tip, looks like the end of a screw. And that one is for attaching the felt bobs, the little white bits that you find, for polishing. So, and it's got a tiny little hole in. You just screw that on to fit that in. I'm just not seeing one of them over here now. I'll pick up one just now. And then also you get the other mandrel that has the little screw on top. So any of your, if you've got older Dremels, you might have gotten little flat sanding papers with a little hole in. That's for screwing them on. And then also the emery wheels for cutting PVC pipe and for cutting brass pipe. You can actually snap them. So they are, let's see if I can find one here. I should have one. There's so many little things here, but it's basically a disc with a little hole in for attaching. So you would attach it that way. Another way to attach things, if you have the speed click system, so that would be either the cut-off wheels. It's got a little butterfly opening, or it looks like a press stud on the other side. So you get a nice fat mandrel. I don't have an empty one. I'll just loosen it. Sorry, just get it off there. Yeah, that mandrel, that's for the speed click system. So you don't need a screwdriver. It's just pull down, click it in place, and you have a number of things that you can attach to the speed click system as well. So that's another way to attach pieces. Just looking quickly while I'm seeing you if anything jumps to mind. Yeah, your diamond wheel also fits on the speed click system. It's a nice big one, so that one you would use to cut through an ostrich egg perhaps. A lot of people ask, can I cut my mosaic tiles with it? No, because glass has a grain, and you get cut at about 3 mils and then it shatters. So you can't cut your mosaic tiles with it. You've got to go the old-fashioned way of scoring and snapping, and then you've got a perfect cut. We also have a carbide wheel, which has the carbide on the edges. That's for cutting wood, because I'm sure if you've used your ordinary reinforced cutters on wood, it burns your wood, and you wonder why. High speed, so there is a carbide one that eliminates the burn. The carbide one. You also get a fixed mandrel carbide one. That's that one. It's a slightly thicker blade, but you can actually, because it's a fixed one, you can actually move backwards and forwards as opposed to just cutting. So you can actually shape with it as well. So that we also have available on the system. One good thing about Dremel, if you ask, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but in time, if enough people ask, they do look at the crafts that we're doing, and then you very soon sort of have something that you can use. And Dremel over the years have always done that. When people started doing their own bathrooms, they brought out the tile cutting system and the grout removal system, to help, to assist. When they were doing the laminate floors, they brought out the cutter that cuts it perfectly, So they look at the market and they do assess and see where the need is, and they bring things out, like the same with the router base. For smaller things, what's nice about it, it's a clear base. You can see your upcoming design and anticipate your corners, so it's a lot neater. Remembering it's a tiny motor compared to your big industrial type of routers, so you can do small increments at a time. But it does make life easier, especially when using a router for the first time. You're petrified of it because they work so fast. The speed is there, but the power is a little less because of the motor strength. But it does work for you. Excuse me. Any other questions so far? what I've mentioned. Okay. So another thing that I quite enjoy using, or an attachment, is the flexible shaft, which fits onto your 4000 range and onto your 3000 range. Something people tend to either, I don't know if they misplace it or they just don't know, or I think mainly it boils down to not reading the manual, is how to attach it to the end of your machine. So what you would do is you would remove the collar, that's the plastic part that sits there, and all our machines have a shaft lock, otherwise you'll turn it until Christmas. So you push in your shaft lock, and then you can apply, either if you're working with your bits on this end and you're going to hold the machine, you're going to work with the collet system, or you're going to attach your multi-chuck, but then you would leave the collar on. But when you want to attach the flexible shaft, you're going to find amongst all your goodies this aluminium colored nut, and it's got a square hole. So basically what happens within your flexible shaft, you have a cable with a square end, and that goes in there, and that's how you attach it. So I've seen some where they've put the collet on this end and then they've got nothing to work on that end, or the collet's over here and they're working with a flexible shaft here. This is how it actually works. It's stronger. And then please, I'm sure you've looked at some videos and you've seen people working with a flexible shaft and it's lying like that. It's not the way to use it. It has to hang. Because of the cable inside, gravity pulls it down to the tip, and so it needs to work that way. Otherwise, if you lie down, what can happen is it moves itself out and then it can work right through. Can't be fixed. You've got to then replace the whole thing because it becomes dangerous then. Okay, so it needs to hang. The first time you remove it from your packaging, it would have a bit of a curve in. So what I always suggest is that you just switch it on without a tip in, let it run free, and then if possible, if you've got a setup like this, just keep it hanging, because every time you turn it and twist it down again, the rubber gets cold and then it just needs to seat again the next time you're going to use it. So I have a setup like that. I just put a plastic bag or an old pillow slip over it, and then it just stays free from dust. Because the minute you pack it away, it's a schlep to take it out, and then like, oh, no, then I'm not going to do it now, you know. So I like to do it that way. No, no, they're fine. Yeah, they don't need to be. In the past, before they changed the look of it, you needed to put in it, but it's a very very fine oil that you need, not an oil, it's more a lubricant that you get, that you have to put on it, but for your general, I think possibly if you working in the industry with it, which it's not supposed to be doing, then one has to possibly take a look at it. But they slip out very easily, so if by chance it slips out onto the dirty floor, what I've just done is just take a cotton roller towel or something and just wipe it clean, free from dust, and then just slip it back in again, because you'll see it's got very little lubricant on it actually, as a matter of fact, yeah. But also, while we're on that, safety is important. I didn't mention that to start off with, but all dust particles are hazardous to your health, so we've got to look at the safety side of things. Wear your glasses, wear a dust mask. Some of the woods are very poisonous if that's what you're going to be working with. And when you're working on glass as well, just make sure you protect your eyes and that sort of thing. Yeah. Even the plastics and the resins, one needs to be careful of getting infected or that sort of thing. Any other questions so far? So you mentioned you were looking at other ways to use it. So it's a more application type of things, because I think I've basically covered the bits and where they would work and that sort of thing, because the sky's the limit, because we have so much available. I haven't gotten quite to the rest of them yet. We'll get there. I'll just flip the page here and see. Okay, I mentioned earlier red was your cutoff. So anything that has to do with cutting, you're going to find on your red indicators, and there's quite a number of them. Then we've got the purple, which is sanding. No, it's not. It's yeah, it is sanding. I've got the abrasive ones here in my hand. and they're quite nice for removing rust. It just depends on what avenue you're looking in. If you're just doing it as DIY at home, removing rust that's built up on something, they work very well. They come in different grits. You also get, you can do some on your own, which I have done, but I'll show you privately how they work. We also have these little wheels, white ones, brown ones, that also remove little particles, almost like sanding, but very gently. And then sanding, we also have the sandpapers that fit on the speed click. So they're very nice if you're refurbishing cupboards and that with plywood, because when they join, they actually fit in nicely, and you can actually sand beyond the piece, so they're very nice to work with over there. But it's basic. Sanding is the same everywhere. If you do have the little papers by any chance that you fitted onto the mandrel and the screw is in the way, you've possibly wondered, how do I use it? So the way to apply it would be that way. So you hold it in an angle so that the screw doesn't scratch. And I've actually adapted mine, so you can chat with me afterwards. So I'll show you my adaptation so that you don't have that screw bothering you, that I can do with you. Okay, so we've done sanding. When it comes to the sanding drums, let me mention that now. Earlier I mentioned you need the little spanner to remove it. So every time you're going to use your sanding drum, just make sure that your screw has been tightened. Because if you lose it, you have to replace the whole thing. We don't sell the screws separately. So how does a sanding drum work? Basically what it is, it's a rubber tube with a washer that fits inside. And by tightening the screw, what you do is you kick it out a little bit and it holds onto the sleeve so that it doesn't fly off. If it flies off, then you'll find that you've got to just go and find it somewhere again. Yeah. They come in two sizes. Unfortunately, not smaller. I would love them to be smaller than that. But the two sizes, and then the two different grits as well. If you look at mine, you'll see I've extended it a wee bit. Also, once again, so that the screw doesn't hamper or scratch what I'm working on. And they work pretty well. And many people have asked, what's the difference? There's a huge, or actually they've mentioned, there's a huge difference with the sanding drums between Dremel and the other makes in the price. Not a huge difference, but there's quite a substantial difference. Quality. And I'm not even going to go beyond that with quality. Ours last forever. You actually wish they'd break and throw them away now, but the quality, very high quality on those there. Yeah, I think, but then you've also got to remember, normally heat, when you're sanding, it generates heat. And so you get a lot of things taking place. So if you want it to be a bit easier, what you could do is you could take some baby powder or maizena before you put it on, just on the rubber, and then slip it on. And then just make sure you tighten it a lot, because then there's less friction, so it could come off easily as well. What you do also have is, so what I've done is, because the on and off takes a while, or not a while, a long while, but when you're busy with a project, I'm impatient and I want to hurry up. So I have a set of them. So all the different grits are on different ones, so that I just then pick up the next one. And then I have more than one as well. We do have a speed click one. Just see if I can find it here. So you just pull it on and off. Also just clicks, so you don't have, but it only comes in the larger diameter. It doesn't come in the small diameter. So there is a speed click one. And I have found with a silicone, that one can also become, it's a little bit not sticky, but it holds on. So if you also just put a bit of powder on, it's easier to just take it on and put it back on again there. Okay. No, not for sanding silicone. The actual, this one internally, it's rubber. That the speed click one, the internal part is silicone. Yeah. I think with silicone is quite a magic product, and sanding it, I don't know. I don't think our grits would work on that. Yeah. Right. Okay. Any questions so far? Nothing. Okay, so I think we can move on from the sanding. Oh, I didn't mention the flap wheels. Flap wheels we also have. They're quite nice to do if you've got profile sanding to do, so sanding where the shape is not even. It's a soft sand, it doesn't take away. So if you push quite hard with your normal one, you can actually change the shape. Where with your flap wheels, they also come in different grits. They a lot of little bits of sandpaper that have been pasted together, so it's quite a nice soft sand. Yeah. When I do outdoor demos, then I take something strange with like a metal lamp or something to clean it, and I actually have a chair that I cleaned, and then you get to use all these things in all tiny little spaces, and then you get to know what you can use where, and take a bit of luck. You'd be able to take rust off chrome using the flap wheels without damaging the chrome, without scratching it. That I know because I was busy with the chair. That why chrome rusts, I don't know, but I think it's maybe a little old, but you can use that for that there then. Okay. And then we've basically got the drills, which are self-explanatory. Um, People have mentioned how come I can drill a 6 millimeter hole if our shaft is only 3.2 millimeters, but our wood drill bits go up to a 6 millimeter from a 3 millimeter. So you can drill a 6 millimeter hole with it. Chuck, yes. Yeah, I think a 2.8. Yeah, no. 2.4, and then it's a point 0.8. The smallest one is a point 0.8. Yeah, 1 mil is fine. It holds 1 mil. It will hold a point 0.8. Yes, yeah. Yeah. So, and then 3.2 is your standard, but it actually goes a little bigger than that as well. Okay, so that's quite handy for drilling. Best to have it in the machine itself, but when I need to just drill into a piece of plywood and it's attached like that, I drill it through like that, and it works pretty well for me, just with the 3.2 millimeter drill. Otherwise, you put it in the drill press where everything is a little bit more strengthened, and it's not going to move around. And also, you have, if you're working with a workstation, you can actually turn your drill press all the way through, to a 45-degree. And by putting a different bit in, like the sander or the red oxide, you've got a tool holder then with hands free that you can actually use it with. So it's quite multifunctional there. Here. This also moves up and down. And then while we are on it, this is telescopic, so it doesn't have to be out there. Whoops, that shouldn't be happening. Mine gets thrown into a box, so it popped out there. Okay, right. Oh, yeah, that's the thing is once you've set it up, and you've got it, you don't need to, but mine has to go in a box every time, so it's like collapse. But you see there, once again, that's the problem, you have things, you buy them and they're in a box. The case is nice, but if you've got a setup where you can just have it, then you use it that more often, Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just these normal fold up workbenches. It's not even a meter. So you've got a tiny little workspace, one on one end, and covered it up. Yes. Yeah, I think too. Yes. 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 Yeah. 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 I think one tends to forget, if you need to ream a hole a little larger on a hinge in the kitchen, because I mean, that's the type of thing, the kitchen cupboards open all the time, and inevitably you need to replace a hinge eventually, and then you don't get them exactly the same because the holes don't align perfectly, and so you have the Dremel and you have the things, and you can just ream it very quickly, whereas otherwise you're standing there with a file. So what it does do is it does make your day-to-day things also, like I mentioned earlier on, grinding off a just a corner edge of the gazebo or something like that, where it's snagging your clothes. So you can really use them in and around the house for getting into smaller spaces. And even on the drilling side, if you need to get into a narrow where your big drill can't fit, your Dremel at least can get in there for you, to a certain degree. Yes, yes, yeah. Sometimes you just get them snagging, and you think, like, "Oh, what can I use?" And there the Dremel is. You've got it there. It's just to remember to use it, and that's where I started with Dremel. Is like people said, you got to teach this. So like, just to think, okay, other than baking cake, it can do most things, or assisting you in that sense of the word. So take it and use it for the chair, okay, that one works, okay, that one doesn't work. So you've just got to really go out there and try it a little bit. Yeah. They used to a long time ago have a little. I've actually seen one and worked on one, a little lathe, but that's Dremel America. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's still available, but they did have one in the past. Yeah, yeah, because people use it for, especially if you go onto YouTube and look, they do cut-off saws, lovely ones, that you can actually do like a table saw using the 4000, with the cutters, but you've got to go make the effort to build it. It's the same. People have asked for a clamp for this, and they actually do give you a way of building a sort of a hold all that's quite easy if you do a lot of drilling and that sort of thing. Just something to hold, or a vice, not really a clamp, to hold things firmly. So there are ways to do it, but Dremel themselves don't. Yeah, for specific jobs. Yes, yeah, we've got the little gadgets, like the circular cutter, which is nice because your router doesn't do such a small one. So basically, uh-huh, yes, yeah, yeah. So there are some cool things out there. Yeah, deflector things for sparks and dust and ergonomic handles. So yeah, we've got quite a bit of them. Yeah, yeah. Any questions come through there, Jordan? Oh, okay, right. Was there anything else that you sort of wanted to know, covering Dremel basically of what we've got here? We can do motor saw as well. Jordan, are we going to do the motor saw? Okay. How many of you want to know about the motor saw? Okay. All right. Well, it's called the motor saw, Dremel motor saw, but it is a scroll saw. Yeah. 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 So what's nice about the Dremel one is the fact that it actually comes apart and you can fold it away into a suitcase, but you can actually also use it as a fret saw. So you can use it this way as well. So that's quite nice. So you have your speed control there, on off switch here, and so it comes with your table and two clamps and an edge guide and your case, basically. So what your machine comes with, it comes with 5 different blades, or not five, actually three, but you get 5 in the package. You get your multi-purpose blade. I'm just trying to find it here. Oh, here we go. Of all the blades, it's the firmest one. And you'll also see when you have hold them upright, you've got a solid piece up there, and the solid piece differs on all of them. They vary. So the one that's got the longest solid piece and that's the most flexible, that one's for cutting soft metals, but very thin soft metals, gold and silver as well. And then we've got the next one, which is for your thinner, almost if you're cutting Baltic birch, about 2 mils, and very fine, delicate designs on very thin materials, you would use that. Otherwise, the multi-purpose one, you cut perspex with it, you cut superwood, you cut pine up to the thickness of a pallet, more or less between 12 and 16 mils. Yeah, not any more than that because we're looking at a smaller machine here. But what's nice about it and the speed that it happens with is the fact that it doesn't have a tensioner. So it's got a pinned blade. So you once you've hooked that in, you don't have to tighten anything. So therefore, you can't cut very thick because you need a tensioner then to hold your blade sturdy so that it doesn't bend. Okay. When it comes to the fitment, what you have at the bottom is you have a fork and your pin hooks into the fork, and then you just need to hook it on top. So as with a jigsaw, when you look at your teeth, they need to face down. And if you forget, on your machine itself, it has a little indicator on the side that gives you a picture of the teeth going downwards. So basically, they zigzag and straight and zigzag and straight, and so they show down. If you put it in upside down, it's not a problem. You're just not going to cut anything because there's no teeth. They can't cut. So when it's not cutting, just take a look and just turn it around because that happens. So this little lever here it catches the blade, so it needs to be forward. The foot in the up position, teeth obviously facing forward. You hook it in, push back, lock it in place, and if you're not sure, just make sure it's not moving. So there we can go. Quite easy in that sense. If you want to use the foot to hold the piece of material that you're working on steady, you can do that. But the way I cut it, I don't need to use that. So remember, what you need to do is apply a little bit of down pressure and then move forward. When you're doing any cutting, you're doing it for your pleasure. You're not doing it because you may be in a hurry, but remember to enjoy it. So don't force the machine because that's why you bought it, so that you don't have to stand and work like this. Allow the machine to do the work, and then you'll be much more successful. We also have an aperture here to fit a vacuum cleaner to suck away any fine dust that, obviously, if cutting wood, you're going to have the fine dust. So you can use that as well. And then basically it's just a matter of following the line. So when you start, once you're going to do it for the very first time, take a piece of ply that you're not sorry for, draw or just cut, just to get the feel of the machine. Then you can draw some straight lines and you can draw some curved lines, and then see how far you can follow them. So what I always say is, once you've put it onto the machine, push down with this hand. I'm right-handed, so possibly being left-handed, you would do it the other way around. And then guide with the other finger. Just gently guide and allow it to follow the lines. There are a couple of tips that you wouldn't sort of be able to see if you're watching on camera as to the turns and that sort of thing, but you can practice a little bit and then you come right. Internal spaces, what you need to do is to pre-drill a hole, then you thread your blade through and you remove the internal space. Nobody's going to give you a noddy badge if you cut the internal space into 1,000 little pieces, unless you're wanting to use it and so on. But make as many cuts as you like. So what I do when I have anything with a corner is I cut from two sides, then my corners are clean and I don't have to clean up afterwards and all the fuzzies are gone. And then I either reverse and cut again or cut a space for the blade to turn, because too often you'll find if it makes a noise, then you probably got too little space and the blade is not turning nicely. Yeah. But these have all been done, the circles, so you can do quite tight circles with it. And here we're using a 6mm MDF, so it can really work each one of those. Yeah, exactly. But why are you going to do something like this? Because you want one and you want to enjoy doing it, so not everybody's going to do it. Yeah, you got to start again. Yeah. No, no, no. I have seen or heard that they use it, the machine itself, but as a part of it. But yeah, it doesn't have, not in South Africa anyway. You see, because when we do, we need to have backup, and so then all that has to be in place first before that can happen. We have to have service centers, and we have to have people that can help you in situations and so on. yeah, no, but CNC, is again very different to the whole running of this, Well, I'm not getting involved in that there, but that's they need to then employ more people and all, I guess. Mm, yeah, I'm sure there would be the functions, yeah, but we'll leave that to the experts to sort out. Okay, any questions on this? I can show you how it works. We can do that after. Yes, yes. No, it's just one unit all on its own. It's not doesn't have a rotary tool to it. So it's an individual. Yeah, yeah, and it's reciprocating, so it's a unit all on its own. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's for your smaller things, just for the type of things, words. If you're wanting to cut out aluminium shapes or smaller things, perspex and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's where it's used for. Yeah, I did the plywood box with that. Yeah, so I did do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Something I didn't mention earlier on, I mentioned individual router bits. You can buy them as individuals, or you can get them in a set where they cover all the sweeps. So that also is available for your router. We can maybe touch on the router a little bit. So basically, what your router does is it allows you to either do a shaped edge on a table top, or not really table, but on a surface. The profiles are smaller than your regular routers, and also for dropping backgrounds to a certain depth. So if you're wanting to drop a 10 mil surface, then you're going to have to do it in increments of say 3 meters, also millimeters, depending on the material that you're using. So what I actually did was, on this Emboyer box, I actually dropped the background to be able to raise the surface, and have a design on it. Or what you otherwise would do is, if you've drawn a pattern on a piece of wood and you want to outline it before shaping it. So if you've drawn a gecko, for instance, and you outline it with a bit, you can either use a flat bit, but the 3 mil is the smallest we have. So you're going to have a 3 mil groove all the way around, or you're going to use the cone and then almost as a milling tool, just open the edges so that you can then shape it a little more, whether it be a butterfly or whatever, just to round it over. So you can do that then. Yeah. And this I actually carved solely using Dremel. So it's difficult to see, but it's violets and leaves that have been done using the Dremel. So if you don't have the skill of working with hand tools when it comes to carving on wood, the Dremel allows you to shape the wood um, in a quite fashionable way without having the skill of the hand tools there. So, and that's also one avenue that you can then use it on. You can use it. I use it for fine detailing on sculpting, because very often. Not the router, just your normal machine. Yeah. So your router, basically, you would then drop your background surfaces, or you would um, say we want to do inlay a tile or do some wood inlay and a very small area, then you would use that, your router to do that. So basically what it does is, there's a lock on the edge, you push down, obviously. Okay, let's do it here because there's a hole below the surface, lock it in place. And then you also have this section here where you can really lock it tight so that it doesn't move. And then you've got that, it's about a 2 mil space that I've left there, so that you can then work and to remove the background then before placing something else in it. Or else, if you put a profile on it, you would use it to go all the way around the edge. It also has an edge guide for doing the edges perfectly, so you can use that there as well. And as I mentioned right at the start, it's got a clear base, so you can anticipate the design. So that makes life a little bit easier when using the plunge routing attachment. So it's nice to have. especially for smaller things, because the profiles are small, especially in the crafting world. If you're doing decoupage or that sort of thing, you've just got a nice edge where your bigger routers can't work on small things. So you've got to work your way around. You've got to have a big board and do it in a smaller area. So yeah, you can then basically decide which way you want to do that there. Any questions on the router? Even with a larger router, you don't do it all in one shot because your wood can rip. So depending on the type of wood you're working on, you would then, 3 moles, sometimes 5, depending on the softness of the wood. Yeah, yeah. But you also just got to play around a little bit with it. Yeah, yeah. The minute your bit burns, it's going blunt. So you also don't want to push the limits with it there. Yeah, yeah. And basically, the difference, you can put the 4,000 in there as well. I've got the 3,000 in here. 3,000 has the slide speed control, and your 4,000 has the dial speed control. So it has a low speed, 5,000 RPMs, maximum speed 34,000 RPMs, where this one has 10,000 lowest, 32,000 highest. Yeah. This one, highest 34. Yeah. Yeah, to us who do crafts doesn't mean very much. You can listen to the motor, but for the guys working on plastics and PVCs and that sort of thing, they want a lower speed. And then also on the backing of your thing, it tells you the maximum speed. If you've thrown it away, you can look in your not catalog, your manual. They've got all the numbers listed of the bits. So you would need to refer to the number, what materials they can be used on, and what the maximum speed is. So I've had people coming saying, yeah, but this thing melted. Why? Because it was going too fast. Or the drill burnt too fast. So there are reasons behind it. So you can't abuse the bits. You've got to sort of be gentle with them, and they aren't going to last forever. But something that I've just recently done, because the bristle brushes come in that fashion and in the cup, and I picked up an old plate that's been carved at a church sale, and I think I paid 25 Rand for it, but it's beautifully done. It's an oval platter, and the background was pierced, and I've been removing the varnish from it. Tedious work, I tell you. It's taken me months to get the thing clean. And then I actually used the cup one to actually polish after I'd applied. So this just very gently. So I was quite chuffed that I could, because this one was difficult to get into the spaces. So I've just done that, yeah. So yeah, they're useful for getting into small places. And then you also have them in the tuft sort of fashion, for applications. Yeah. And you get the brass brushes as well that are used for cleaning and that sort of thing. And then the ones with the copper stem, they for electrical work, so that you don't have an added charge to them there. Yeah. So going through the manual, you learn quite a bit about it as well. When it comes to buffing and polishing, there's also the impregnated buff, so it has got emery powder in it, so it can buff and polish marks out. So there's quite a lot that you can put onto the Dremel to make your life a little bit easier. Questions? No, we're good. Okay. I think I've sort of covered everything. I don't think I said much about the stylo. That is the latest addition that we have to the range. For engraving, it's lovely because you've just got this part of it. It's very lightweight. It's nice for doing acrylic nails. You can do a little bit of sanding with it, but if it's working too hard, it will just cut out. Also has a speed variation, and I line them up because they beautiful for doing very fine detail work and that sort of thing. So I quite enjoy using them. Otherwise, the flexible shaft, I use that pretty often. 22,000 RPMs. No, variable. Variable. Yeah, variable. Yeah. Yeah. So nice little thing this. Yeah. 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 I can show you how to do it. As I say, engraving glass is really very basic. It'll practice a little bit if you don't have a good handwriting, yeah. But engraving on anything, even when you watch videos and tutorials, they do it and it looks perfect. But they've tried a little bit, and practiced a bit to get it to look like that, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's good to just mess around a little bit and sort of push to the limits in certain aspects, but not to overwork the machines. Yeah. Okay, if there are no questions, then I think I'm done with this part of it, and then we can just sort of have a look and see what, where, and how. Perfect. Good. Do you want to do the scrolls or the engraving? I can bring the engraving closer. Okay, so let's rather bring the engraving a bit closer, then we can see that. Next part. I don't have a next part. I can report it all, yeah, because we've touched on all the attachments. Yeah, so it would just be a repetition unless there's something specific, but I don't have there's not much else other than physically doing it. So I don't know if you want to look. Well, we can on the scroll saw. I can sit and work. Okay, and we can look at the engraving side of things too. Okay, let me just. Okay, pleasure. Oh, with a router. Look on. Did I show you? I didn't show my mouse. Okay, so I'm just going to plug this in here now. I actually did a little bit of, I just took a permanent marker and I marked them just to make it easier. Yeah, so I just want to get my glasses out now because now I need them. They're somewhere, yeah. Diamond tips, yeah. Yeah. On the Dremel range, I've got about 8 of them, but I'll mention that just now. But if you buy a set, okay, so let's just get these out here. No, 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 those aren't your. They're all muddled up. Uh, yeah, no, no, mostly they work. Some of them, I think the electroplating is just higher quality. I just want to get us a white page for that. Oh. There we go. Okay, so we'll get started there in a minute or two. Okay, so when it comes to engraving, you're going to select your bit. What I've done is selected one that's got a very fine point, so you'd be able to just outline. And then we'll look at the filling in just now. So either you do it freehand, which just like writing, or you trace something, either stamp it or trace it with a permanent marker, and then you're basically just going to follow the line. So if you've got a bottle, a green bottle or a blue bottle or something like that, and you've drawn a design on it, and you just think you can see it immediately. But with your clear glass, you can, if you're working freehand, you work on a dark surface, or when you're using it that way, you can just color it out. Yeah. So let's just go freehand. I don't have a wonderful handwriting, so I normally draw flowers. But I always say everyone has learned to sign their signature, so you can just come on around. And I like to set it at high speed. I don't go lower than that. everyone has their preferences. So basically what you're going to do is you're just going to hold it a little firmer than you naturally would when you're writing, you know. And then unless you're Dr. Mims, like they've got this power that they use. So that's very fine. So you can just, you switch it on there. Just I find when working with a stylo, it's got the shaft lock right there. So your positioning is more that than there, you know, because you could push the lock and then it just makes a noise. Yeah, so you just want to hold it once you've switched it on, hold it right there because it's got the grip and the indentations. Yeah, it's just a push on. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just a bit slippery, you can almost say. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then draw a heart. Okay, so I want you to color in half of the heart with using that. Okay, that one's quite fun, or just a section of it. Okay, so now the silicon carbide stone that I mentioned earlier on, so color the other half with that, and then you can draw or write something with that as well. I think we can up the speed a little bit. Let's just see, because it's a bit lower. There we go. Okay, so you can feel the difference now in the two, you know. It's much smoother and softer with the stone. Yeah. Okay, and also with the stone now, because it's been worked quite a lot, you can see the difference in the shape. So that's where we're going to go to that dressing stone. Although this is quite hard, so the dressing stone doesn't make much of a difference. But if you're just quite persistent, you know, but it's got an edge, so that's why you get that little sharp. You know, you felt it had sort of a sharp line to it there. You know, so yeah, that's engraving. Or if you're then going to go with something that you've traced. Yeah, so let's just can I do what? Oh, yeah. Okay, and then you can come and just because I put a different bit in now. So what you want to do, it's a ball. So just see how thick it works, and then you can trace the ones that we did with the cokie pin. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, just to get, you know, just to get the feel of it. You see, it's a lot bolder than the other one that you used. Yeah. So now you can use that to just go over the lines, yeah, and then yeah, and the notes you'd basically color in the solid piece, you know, just to get a feel for it there. Then, yeah. Yeah. So when you engrave on glass, it's one of the most inexpensive hobbies, you know, really that you can do because glass is so freely available. So you can use anything that you buy in the stores and just draw something on it, just to enhance it really a little bit. Yeah. So if you put it on the darker, yeah, you see there you can then it stands out nicely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's also quite therapeutic because you know you just focused on that as you go all the way there. Yeah. Oh yeah, there I was busy and I was interrupted. You'd also use this to color in. Yes, well, you could, or you could use the stone. Then you can color in with that. Just I just mentioned that one can use the green stone as well. So would this also make sort of just scratch the surface, or does it make it detailed? Well, if you push harder, because you do get glass engraving as well, where they push a little bit harder, but then you've got to go more to the industrial type because they've got more diamonds, so that's going to go a lot quicker. If you want to have different levels, in the, yeah, then you'd have to go and purchase your bits sort of at the industry where they made for that. Then, yeah, basically. Maybe you want to see this one. You need a dark background though. Okay, good. Yeah, you can't really see it on the light. You can see it quite well. Okay. Okay, so that's that for now, I think. And then thank you so much for joining. And if there are any questions, you can contact me and we'll answer them for you. Super. Okay, you want